31 monsters in 31 days. Welcome to day 3. Let's see who we're making today. And today's monster is the Ogre. All right, let's get started.
While we're sketching out the plan and making the basic blob shape that all the monsters in this series are built off of, I'm going to give you a bit of background on the Ogre and why I included it in my monster list. If you want it, I give you a detailed breakdown on how to make this basic blob shape in this video. It's linked in the description. Ogres appear in mythology and folklore worldwide. However, the ogre of classic literature is typically inhumanely large and muscular but clumsy. They are usually greedy man-eaters with a special taste for children and infants. In medieval and Renaissance Europe, the trope of the ogre was used to scare children into good behavior by suggesting that bad behavior attracted and excited the ogres who would kidnap them. In classic children's stories like Puss in Boots or Jack and the Beanstalk, the narratives often focused on the hero's ability to outwit the ogre, highlighting the importance of intelligence over brute strength. In modern Western culture, ogres have evolved from giant monsters to more nuanced and sympathetic creatures. Of course, Shrek is probably the most well-known example of this. Although Shrek is big and smelly and grumpy, we learn that he is heroic, kind, and capable of love. Ogres appear today in fantasy literature, video games, and tabletop games like Dungeons & Dragons and Warhammer. I included ogres in my monster list because a lot of the horror movie slasher archetype is derived from the ogre trope. When you think about it, Michael Myers from the Haloween movie franchise is an ogre-type character. He's huge and emotionless and impossible to reason with, and his scariness comes from his sheer size, brute strength, and relentlessness. So here's the dry blob. It's got 4 layers of paper mache on it. This is a nice firm base to start with. My next step is to make his teeth and eyeballs because I'll need those to dry before I can add them to his face. I'm sculpting these bits with DOS air dry clay. This clay has a lot of fiber and I really recommend it for a project like this. I'll leave a link for this clay and my other supplies in the video description. My first step was to start with those big lower tusks we sketched out. I'm just ripping off a blob of clay and rolling that into a long cone, and I'm giving it a bit of a curve. I couldn't decide at this point how big I wanted to make the eyeballs, so I sculpted 2 pairs. These are just balls of clay I've flattened against a table, so they're sort of button shaped. Here are all the clay bits dried. I'm going to give them a light sanding with these nail files I like. They'll be in the supply list in the description. Don't forget to protect your lungs while sanding. Ultimately, I decided to go with the smaller eyeballs. I painted these black. I thought my ogre would look extra dumb and brutish with small, dark, beady eyes. I gave his teeth a couple coats of a slightly yellowish off-white. I also coated his eyes with some UV resin to both give them a glossy finish and protect them from the extra paper mache I'm about to do. So somehow I didn't film attaching the eyes to his head, but you didn't miss much. I basically just stuck them onto the blob with hot glue, then used some of my paper mache paper to give him some eyelids. If you want to know more about my paper mache method, I've got a whole video breaking down my glue recipe, the type of paper I use, and all that good stuff. It's linked in the video description. Anyhow, I made the lower eyelids in the same way that I made the upper eyelids, which I'll show you right now. I just put a bit of glue on some of my paper, fold it a few times to thicken it up a bit, then wrap it around the eye like this. But for the top, I'm going to obviously lay it over the top of the eye. That on the other eye too, then blend that in with some bits of paper mache over the torn edge. Figured I needed to give him some wrinkles in his brow to make him look like a thick-skulled old ogre. So I added a couple snakes of aluminum foil to his forehead and covered those with some paper mache. And I kind of hated how this looked, so I decided to take a break and have a go at making his nose. I made this out of aluminum foil too. I wanted his nose to be big and blocky and a little asymmetrical because he's probably broken his nose in battle a few times. I covered the nose in paper mache, then tried to put the nose on his face, but I still couldn't get over the fact that he kind of looks like a little weenie. Not the big, strong ogre I was going for. So I ended up pulling off his nose and walking away for the night.
So I'm not really loving where we left off with this guy. I think we need to do some major facial reconstruction. So I'm going to play around with changing the shape of his face a bit, and hopefully we can redeem this guy.
So I hot glued the dry nose back on there, and then the first change I'm making is to change his eyelids. I think slanting them down like this will make him look a little more angry. Next, I'm thinking he needs a much stronger brow, so I extended the bridge of his nose up a lot higher, then I slapped on a bunch of foil to bring his brow and forehead up quite a bit. Okay, now he's looking a bit like he's wearing a poorly made and wrinkly helmet, but I can already tell this is looking a lot better. Trust the process with me here, okay? I'm using some long snakes of foil to give him some deep head ridges and prominent nose wrinkles. And then I gave him this weird metal mustache. Listen, every project has an ugly phase, okay? Some projects have too, but I have a vision, stay with me here. An ogre needs a strong lower jaw, so I'm slapping another big wad of foil over that mustache. Then I'm giving him some cheekbones. And his head is still looking weird and out of proportion, so I slapped a great big wad of paper onto the top of his head. I smoothed that all out with a bunch of masking tape and covered that all in paper mache. This is looking way better, but I still think his jawline needs to be a little bit more square, so I made some paper jaw implants and I'm covering those in paper mache too. I'm liking this face a lot more. I'm very happy with the changes I've made, but this has to dry now. Now he's dry, so I glued his teeth to his face off camera and I'm building him a pair of little ears with cardboard, glue, and tape. I'm using this scrap of paper towel to make his lower lip here. I'm coating it front and back with my paper mache paste, then I'm twisting up another little wad of paper to set on the middle there. I'm folding that into a nice little taco, and then I'm picking it up and sticking it to the ogre face just like this. I'm using some of my brown paper to smooth the torn edge of the paper towel into the sculpture. Now I'm just covering those little ears with some paper mache, and he was just screaming for a belly button, so I twisted up some paper and gave him one of those. Here he is all dry. Before I paint him, I'm giving those teeth a coat of UV resin. Then I'm giving his top 2/3 a coat of gesso. The bottom third is getting a couple coats of dark green. When dry, I'm going over the gessoed area with this bright green. Yeah, he's getting Shrek's skin tone. I think it kind of works. I'm going in with a few lowlights around the eyes and in his brow ridges and under his chin. But then I decided to just freaking go for it, and I mixed up a gray-green wash and slapped him with that. If you're not familiar, a wash is just watered down acrylic paint you slap on with a big brush and then wipe back with a damp paper towel. The wash sits in the nooks and crannies of the sculpture, and it's a great way to make it look more grungy and textured. When the wash is dry, I'm going in with a bit of yellow on a sponge to add in some highlights. To finish him off, I'm cleaning off his teeth and eyes with a cotton bud dipped in rubbing alcohol. And then, as a final polishing finish, I'm gluing a bit of black felt onto the bottom. And here's our finished ogre. Do you like the green color choice? How do you feel about the wash I used? Let me know in the comments. I try to reply to all of them. Thanks so much for watching to the end. If you could hit the like button or even comment a random emoji, I'd so appreciate it. Since I'm a smaller channel, anytime you interact, it really helps me out because it tells YouTube this video is worth watching. And also, feel free to try out that new hype feature YouTube has launched. That would make my freaking day if you hyped up my video. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss tomorrow's video. If you want to see it early, it's already up on my Patreon. And again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.